I was 4 or 5. Do you remember your earliest childhood memory? Developmental neuroscience says we don't form real memories before the age of 3, that anything before that is just a phantom, a shadow of what could be a memory, a mistake the brain makes, mislabeling dreams and daydreams as real. That's what they say, but I can still remember things from that age. It's hard to ignore when something feels so vivid, so alive in your head. I didn't know it then, but I was about to uncover something that would challenge everything I thought I knew about memory, about reality. I'm a grad student studying linguistics. My work sometimes overlaps with neuroscience, and I've made a few contacts in that department. One of them is DV, a fellow grad student. He studies memory, but he doesn't just study it like everyone else, he's trying to manipulate it. DV uses a method called transcranial magnetic stimulation. It's a process where you use magnetic radiation to activate different parts of the brain, sort of like a magic wand for neurons. You can point it at specific areas and say, "Dance," and they dance. 2 months ago, DV asked me for help with a project he was developing. I didn't know what it was about, but he had helped me before when I was learning to use an EEG, so I owed him. Besides, his machine doesn't break the skin. It seemed harmless enough. I arrived at his lab late one night, as instructed. He was waiting by the door, wearing a lab coat that was far too big for him. He looked childlike, almost lost in it. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice nervous but eager. "For what?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. "I just need practice focusing the machine. I'm targeting an area of the brain no one's ever targeted before." I agreed, not hesitating. After all, what could go wrong? It was just a machine, and I trusted him, or at least I thought I did. I sat down in the examination chair. The leather straps on the arms were unused, just there in case. The lab was high up on the campus hill, and the view out the window was one of the few things that comforted me. The orange glow of the city below, the cars drifting along the highway. It was peaceful, or it should have been. "Just relax," DV said, his breath minty with a trace of alcohol. He turned on the machine, and I felt the hum of electricity crawl across my scalp. It wasn't painful, but there was a buzzing, like hundreds of tiny needles tapping at my skin. The vibrations focused just behind my ears, and then the burning started. The points of contact on my head flared, sharp, like something was eating into my skull. "How do you feel?" DV whispered, but I could hear the anticipation in his voice. He already knew. He was too eager. Before I could answer, I heard it. A scream, a howl from down the hall. It wasn't human, at least not in the way we think of humans. The sound was raw, animalistic. A body writhing in pain, something breaking, snapping. I heard someone crying out my name, choking on the syllables as they gasped. It sounded far away, but so close, like it was coming for me. "I think I need a break," I said, trying to turn my head, but something held me in place. My hands, I couldn't move them. The wrist straps, had they been fastened, I tried to pull away, but the more I struggled, the more I felt the hands press down on me. "How long have I been here?" No answer. The sounds grew closer. Someone was pounding on the door, but it didn't matter. The door to the lab was unlocked. I knew it was, but it stayed closed. I couldn't move. "Please turn it off," I begged. The machine wasn't just buzzing anymore. It felt like it was tearing into me, like lightning coursing through my veins, burning everything inside. My eyes blurred. My head was spinning. Through the window, the world outside seemed to fracture. The cars on the road. They weren't driving anymore. They were crashing. Headlights skidding out of control. I saw them plunge into the river, pile up in the street. The city lights blinked out, one by one. And the darkness stretched out in front of me, swallowing everything. I felt myself being pulled into it, the void. It was endless, more distance than any horizon could hold. There was nothing, only the pool of that emptiness. And I couldn't escape. I was alone for a moment, a precious, fleeting moment. Then, the silence was shattered by a man. But not a man in any sense I could recognize. He was wrong. He didn't have skin, or muscles, or any of the things that make a body human. Just twitching veins and arteries, all spilling out in sickening bursts. I could see his heart, shriveled in his chest, as he looked at me. No humanity left, just slaughter. He was so close I could smell the rotten meat clinging to his silver bones. "Do you remember me?" he asked. His teeth were bared like a wild animal's, jagged, unnaturally sharp. His body wasn't even fully formed, more like it had been pulled apart in time, his mouth. It looked like a slow exposure photo of a carcass burning from the inside. "Yes," I said, though I didn't want to, because I did remember him. When I was too young to hold onto memories, I had a dream. In that dream, he was there, walking behind me. He whispered things to me about the universe, things no one should know, things that made my stomach churn. He was a man without skin then too, just as he was now. He followed me everywhere. Through movie theaters, through city parks, through dark tunnels and forgotten forests, through the familiar rooms of my childhood home, until I was huddled in the corner of my bedroom closet, shaking, paralyzed, and he spoke. He spoke words I can't even describe, words my mind can't hold onto, as if the universe itself was telling me something I wasn't meant to understand. I woke up then, cold, drenched in sweat, my lips burning with the taste of bile. My eyes felt like they were about to fall out of my head. I tried to forget that dream, tried to erase it from my mind. I've searched every language, every book, for the words I heard, but there's nothing. No language can hold what he said, and now, here he was again, standing in front of me, the machine still humming in my skull, its power breaking me down, opening me up, letting him in again. He spoke those words again, and once more, my mind tried to reject them, to forget, to fight, but there was no escape. I don't know how long I was there, it felt like an eternity, but then, suddenly, it stopped. The machine was off, the fog lifted, I was awake, like snapping out of a dream. "How long was I hooked up for?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Less than a minute," DV replied, but his voice had changed. It was no longer confident, no longer sure, it trembled now. You okay?" I realized then that my wrists weren't bound, I could move. The panic hit me hard, but I forced myself to stand. I grabbed my things, my body numb. The ringing in my ears was deafening, but it wasn't the same sound. They were dissonant, like the final notes of a song I hadn't heard in 20 years. "I'm not coming back," I said. My voice felt distant, detached. DV nodded, his face pale, his lab coat stark against his white skin. I walked out of the lab, not looking back. I didn't trust myself behind the wheel of a car, so I walked. 5 miles to my place. The night was silent, too silent. Even the crickets, usually loud and chirping, were still. When I got home, I vomited into the bathroom sink. I watched the remnants of my day circle the drain, spinning down, pulling the last of me with it. I looked at myself in the mirror. My shirt was soaked in blood, but not just blood. There was a pattern on it, the imprint of ribs across the front. The blood was fresh, still wet to the touch, and my pockets when I reached into them were full of cartilage. My socks were soaked in, after birth. I threw the clothes away, packed them into the trash, compacted them down. That night, DV and I never spoke again. I don't see him on campus. I do my work. I pay my rent. I go to sleep to the sound of talk shows on weekdays and whiskey on weekends. I try not to think too much about the past, about childhood. Somewhere in the forgotten recesses of my memory, there's a word, a phrase, something I'm not meant to remember, something that shouldn't be heard. The man without skin tried to tell me, and I chose not to remember. Twice now. At the start of this story, I asked you to recall your first memory. I hope it was from when you were 4 or 5. I hope it was just something simple, like your first injury or something like that. Because somewhere in your mind, there's something your developed brain chose not to remember. And I hope that's all you find, because the things I heard, the things he said, the horror of those forgotten words is too great for any human mind to comprehend. I hope your dreams are peaceful, and that your nightmares don't leave you wishing you were still asleep. Most of all, I hope this story keeps you from exploring the deepest, darkest corners of your mind. When we're born, we have no defenses against the world, physical or mental. Maybe it takes a few years to build those defenses, but maybe some things are better left forgotten.